Dr. Alan Winters stared at his computer screen, rubbing his tired eyes. For 3 nights straight, he had analyzed the strange signal patterns coming from deep space. The radio telescope array in New Mexico had picked them up first, rhythmic pulses that didn't match any known celestial phenomenon. "This can't be right," he muttered, reaching for his coffee mug only to find it empty. The patterns showed intelligence, mathematical sequences that couldn't possibly be natural. Alan had been working for NASA for 15 years, and he had never seen anything like this. His phone rang, startling him. "Winters," he answered. "Dr. Winters, this is Lieutenant Lisa Grant from Space Force. We need to talk about those signals." Alan's heart raced. "You've been monitoring my research." "For the past week. I'm outside your office now." The door opened, revealing a woman in a crisp military uniform. Her expression was serious, her posture rigid. Lieutenant Grant closed the door behind her. "Those signals aren't random noise, are they?" she asked, though it wasn't really a question. Alan shook his head. "They contain prime number sequences, geometric progressions, and what appear to be atomic element identifiers. Someone is trying to communicate, or they don't care if we hear them." Lieutenant Grant placed a folder on his desk. "We've detected an object at the edge of our solar system. It's moving faster than anything we've ever recorded. The trajectory suggests it's heading directly for Earth." Alan opened the folder to find satellite images of a dark mass against the stars. "How big is it?" "Roughly the size of Manhattan." The room seemed to spin around him. "Have you notified the government?" "An emergency meeting is being held with world leaders as we speak." Lieutenant Grant's voice remained calm, though her eyes betrayed her concern. "We need you to join our analysis team immediately." 3 days later, Alan found himself in an underground facility with scientists and military personnel from around the world. The atmosphere was tense as they shared information about the approaching object. "It's slowing down," reported Dr. Mai from China's space agency. "The deceleration defies our understanding of physics." On the main screen, satellite feeds tracked the object as it passed Mars. Now they could see its shape, elongated and smooth, with sections that appeared to rotate independently of each other. "That's no asteroid," said Professor Garcia, the Spanish astrophysicist. "That's a vessel." General Harris cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, the President has authorized me to form a response team. We don't know if this is a peaceful visit, but we need to prepare for all possibilities." As if responding to the general's words, every computer in the room suddenly displayed the same message, a series of mathematical equations followed by what appeared to be a 3-dimensional star map. "They're trying to establish communication," Alan whispered. Lieutenant Grant pointed to a blinking dot on the map. "That's us, isn't it? Earth's position in the galaxy." Alan nodded slowly. "And that," he pointed to a large area highlighted on the map, "appears to be territory they're claiming belongs to them." The implications hung heavy in the air. As the alien vessel continued its approach, news organizations worldwide began reporting unusual sightings in the night sky. The government could no longer keep it secret. That evening, amateur astronomers captured images of the massive ship entering Earth orbit, its surface reflecting sunlight like burnished metal. Within hours, it had positioned itself above the northern hemisphere, visible to the naked eye, a new moon that hadn't existed the day before. Humanity held its collective breath as global defense systems went on high alert. In the underground facility, Alan and Lieutenant Grant worked frantically to decode more incoming transmissions. "I think I've got something," Alan said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "They're calling themselves the Xarians, representatives of something called the Galactic hegemony." Lieutenant Grant's face paled as she read the next part of the message. "And they're here to claim Earth." The massive Xarian vessel hung in Earth's orbit like a metallic continent. Its presence was visible even in daylight, a dark shape partially eclipsing the sun at times. News stations across the world broadcast continuous coverage as panic spread through major cities. Some people fled to rural areas, while others gathered in churches, mosques, and temples to pray. Captain Jack Nelson stood at the command center of the newly formed International Response Division, watching as military satellites tracked smaller craft detaching from the main vessel. "They're deploying something," he said, his voice steady despite the tension. "Get me visibility on those objects." A young technician enhanced the satellite feed. "Sir, 5 smaller ships are descending into the atmosphere. Trajectory suggests they're heading for major capitals: Washington, Moscow, Beijing, London, and New Delhi." Jack turned to his communications officer. "Alert each defense ministry. No one fires unless fired upon. Repeat, no engagement without direct threat." At the United Nations headquarters in New York, an emergency session had been called. Ambassador Keith Powell, a career diplomat with 30 years of experience, had been unanimously selected to represent humanity in this unprecedented situation. "We have no protocol for this," he told the assembled representatives. "But we must present a united front." The chamber fell silent as the main screen displayed an incoming transmission. The face that appeared wasn't what anyone expected. The Xarian looked almost reptilian, with iridescent scales and multiple eyes arranged in a pattern around its head. "People of Earth," the alien spoke in perfect English, its voice resonating with an unusual harmonic quality. "I am High Commander Zex Valen of the Galactic Hegemony. Your world has been charted and claimed for integration." Ambassador Powell stepped forward. "Commander, we welcome peaceful contact, but Earth is not available for claiming. We are a sovereign planet with our own governments and laws." The Xarian made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your species is young. You do not yet understand that all habitable worlds fall under hegemony jurisdiction. We have been monitoring your development for centuries. You have now reached the threshold where contact is permitted." In Washington, D.C., President Roberts met with his Security Council. The smaller Xarian craft had positioned itself directly above the White House, hovering silently. "What are our options?" the President asked. The Secretary of Defense shook her head. "Our most advanced weapons might not even scratch their hull. The technology gap is substantial." Back at the response center, Captain Nelson received reports from military bases worldwide. "Sir, the alien craft are projecting some kind of energy field. Our radar and missile guidance systems are going offline." Lieutenant Grant rushed in with Dr. Winters. "Captain, we've translated more of their communications. The Xarians believe Earth sits on a valuable hyperspace junction point, essentially a cosmic crossroads. They're talking about us like we're a piece of real estate," Jack said grimly. Ambassador Powell continued negotiations at the UN, where the Xarian commander had elaborated on their intentions. "Your species will be classified as protected," Zex Valen explained. "You will maintain limited autonomy under hegemony supervision." "This is generous. Many species are simply relocated." "And if we refuse?" Powell asked. "Refusal is not recognized in hegemony law. Integration will proceed. You have one standard galactic cycle, approximately 30 of your days, to prepare your population. Resistance would be unfortunate." As the transmission ended, world leaders hastily formed a secret global council. Their meeting took place in an underground facility in Switzerland, secure from potential Xarian surveillance. "We need to buy time," said the German Chancellor, "and develop a response strategy," added the Japanese Prime Minister. Ambassador Powell looked around the table at the representatives of Earth's nations, formerly divided by politics and history, now united by an existential threat. "Then let's get to work," he said, "because in 30 days, everything changes." The secret Global Council met beneath the Swiss Alps, in a facility designed to withstand nuclear war. Leaders from every major nation sat around a circular table, their usual political differences set aside in the face of the Xarian ultimatum. "What exactly do they mean by integration?" asked the Australian Prime Minister, her voice tense. Ambassador Powell pulled up the translated Xarian documents on the main screen. "Based on what we've learned, the galactic hegemony operates as a hierarchical empire. Each species is assigned a specific role according to their abilities and the Empire's needs. And what role do they envision for humans? The Brazilian president leaned forward. According to their assessment, Powell said, we would be classified as a Category 3 species, technologically developing but politically unstable. This classification would restrict us to Earth and nearby space, with limited self-governance under Xarian oversight. The Chinese president slammed his hand on the table. This is colonization. They speak of integration, but they mean conquest. Powell nodded. Their documents are quite clear. They view Earth primarily as a strategic location, a hyperspace junction point that connects multiple galactic arms. We're simply occupying valuable real estate. Captain Jack Nelson entered the chamber, followed by Lieutenant Grant and Dr. Winters. They had been granted special clearance to present their findings. We've intercepted and translated more Xarian communications, Jack reported. The hegemony has over 500 member species, most of them incorporated through similar ultimatums. Resistance has historically been unsuccessful. Lieutenant Grant stepped forward. However, we've also learned that the hegemony has laws governing first contact. While they don't recognize our right to refuse integration, they do have protocols for the process. What kind of protocols? Asked the Russian president. Species rights vary based on several factors, she explained. Their level of technological advancement, cultural unity, and potential value to the hegemony. The more valuable we appear, the better our position. Dr. Winters pulled up images of the Xarian vessel. We've also learned something interesting about their technology. While far advanced beyond ours, their system shows signs of stagnation. Their basic technology hasn't significantly evolved in what would be centuries by our reckoning. The French president frowned. How does this help us? Innovation, Dr. Winters said. The hegemony values species that can contribute new ideas. Their society is hierarchical, but also bureaucratic. They've grown complacent. The Secretary General of the UN, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. So we need to demonstrate that humans are more valuable as partners than as subjects. Precisely, Powell agreed. But we have only 30 days to make that case. Meanwhile, aboard the Xarian vessel, High Commander Zex Valen met with his integration team. The ship's massive command center displayed a holographic projection of Earth rotating slowly in the center. Unusual resistance levels for a Category 3 species, noted Science Officer Krev Toll, her scales shifting color as she examined the data. They refused to acknowledge our authority despite their obvious technological inferiority. Their historical records show persistent defiance against overwhelming odds, said cultural analyst Mex Barron. They possess an irrational tendency to resist domination, even when resistance appears futile. Zex Valen made the clicking sound that served as Xarian laughter, a trait that will be bred out within a few generations. Begin preparations for the first phase of integration. Select regional capitals for administrative centers and identify human leaders suitable for intermediate governance. And those who resist, asked the military commander. Standard protocol. Isolated demonstrations of force should be sufficient. Their weapons cannot harm our vessels. Zex Valen dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. By the next cycle, Earth will be just another productive member of the hegemony. Back on Earth, the Council had formed specialized teams. Military, scientific, diplomatic, and intelligence groups worked around the clock to develop a strategy that might save humanity's independence. We have one chance, Ambassador Powell told them. We must make it count. Dr. Olivia Martinez hadn't slept in 3 days. Her laboratory beneath the New Mexico desert hummed with activity as scientists from around the world worked to understand Xarian technology. When a small scout craft had malfunctioned and crashed in the Australian outback, teams had rushed to secure it before the hegemony could recover their property. Look at this, Olivia said, pointing to the damaged communication array she had extracted from the craft. Their quantum entanglement system is efficient, but it has a fundamental vulnerability. Her colleague, Dr. Susan Parker, looked up from her own work reverse engineering the craft's propulsion system. What kind of vulnerability? They use a standardized frequency pattern for all communications, like a universal language. But it makes their systems susceptible to harmonic disruption. Olivia's eyes gleamed with excitement despite her exhaustion. We could potentially interrupt their communications network. Across the facility, Commander Daniel Foster studied tactical data from observations of the Xarian vessels. His military background had taught him that every force, no matter how powerful, had weaknesses. Their defense systems are mostly automated, he told his team of analysts. They rely heavily on technological superiority rather than tactical flexibility. They haven't fought a real war in generations, just police actions against primitive species. So they're overconfident? Asked a young lieutenant. Daniel nodded. And overconfidence creates blind spots. Look here, he pointed to footage of the smaller vessels deploying around Earth's major cities. They follow predictable patterns. Their shields are only activated in response to detected threats. There's a 1.3-second delay. In Washington, intelligence teams come through the limited information they had on the hegemony's legal structure. A junior analyst named Kevin Bailey made a discovery that sent ripples through the command chain. Sir, he told his superior, according to their own laws, planets with sentient species must be registered in the Galactic Registry before legal claim can be established. Earth isn't in their registry. The information was rushed to the Global Council, where Ambassador Powell immediately recognized its significance. This means their claim might not be legally binding even under their own system. We have grounds for an appeal. Meanwhile, at the United Nations, Xarian representatives had established a temporary embassy. They conducted interviews with selected humans, assessing Earth's resources, culture, and potential resistance. What they found surprised them. This species is unpredictable, reported cultural analyst Mex Baron to High Commander Zex Fallon. They simultaneously wage war against themselves while cooperating on global initiatives. Their technology is primitive, yet they've made remarkable advances in specific areas. Their political structures are inefficient, added another officer. Yet they show surprising unity in crisis, countered Mex Baron. They may be more adaptable than initial scans indicated. Zex Fallon dismissed these concerns. Every species resists at first. Begin the preliminary property survey and prepare population control measures. Their quaint defiance will fade once they understand the benefits of hegemony membership. Unknown to the Xarians, every word of their conversation was being recorded and translated by devices Dr. Martinez had developed based on the captured scout craft's technology. In the underground war room, Captain Jack Nelson reviewed their growing list of Xarian vulnerabilities. We're making progress, but we need more time. Time is something we don't have, Lieutenant Grant reminded him. We're already 10 days into their 30-day ultimatum. Ambassador Powell entered the room with a determined expression. We need to take the initiative. I've consulted with the Council, and we've made a decision. We're going to address the galactic hegemony directly, on their terms, but with our message. And what message is that? Jack asked. Powell's face was grim but resolute. That humans don't surrender their home without a fight. And more importantly, that fighting us would cost more than it's worth. How do we deliver that message when we can barely scratch their ships? Lieutenant Grant asked. Dr. Parker looked up from her workstation with a slight smile. We just finished adapting their propulsion technology to one of our experimental vessels. We can reach their headquarters within their time frame. And we'll bring something they don't expect. Commander Foster added, a demonstration they won't forget. Lieutenant Paul Mitchell stood on the launch pad, gazing up at humanity's best hope, a sleek black vessel that combined Earth technology with reverse-engineered Xarian systems. The ship, hastily named Defiant, represented 20 days of round-the-clock work by the world's brightest minds. She's not pretty, but she'll fly, said Chief Engineer Roy Adams, patting the hull. The adapted propulsion system should get you to the Galactic Council headquarters within 3 days. Paul nodded, his expression serious. As a test pilot with extensive combat experience, he had been selected to fly this unprecedented mission. And the other systems. The communication array works perfectly, Dr. Martinez assured him, checking readings on her tablet. And the demonstration package is secure in the cargo hold. Ambassador Catherine Morris approached, followed by a small team of diplomats and military advisors. At 52, she had been chosen to represent Earth for her sharp mind and unflappable demeanor. Remember, she told the crew, our goal is to secure non-interference status. We're not declaring war, we're preventing one. The launch occurred under cover of darkness. To avoid Xerian detection, the Defiant used conventional rockets until reaching orbit, only engaging its advanced drive system once safely away from Earth. Aboard the main Xerian vessel, an alert sounded. Commander, reported a sensor officer, an Earth craft has left orbit. It appears to be using our propulsion technology. High Commander Zex Valen's scales darkened with surprise. Impossible. They couldn't have adapted our systems so quickly. The readings are clear, sir. They're heading toward the Council sector at incredible speed. Zex Valen hesitated, then made a decision. Send pursuit vessels. This level of technological appropriation is unexpected and concerning. 3 days later, the Defiant arrived at the massive space station that served as the Galactic Council headquarters. The structure was a marvel of engineering, a city in space where representatives from hundreds of worlds conducted the business of the hegemony. Ambassador Morris and her team were escorted by security drones to the council chamber. The vast room contained delegates from diverse species, many viewing the humans with curiosity or disdain. The Earth delegation may approach, announced the council arbiter, a tall, crystalline being whose voice resonated throughout the chamber. Catherine stepped forward. Honorable Council, we come before you to petition for Earth's recognition as a sovereign world, exempt from forced integration. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. A Xerian representative rose. Earth sits on critical hyperspace coordinates. Their primitive species cannot be allowed to control such a valuable location. We understand the strategic importance of our world, Catherine replied calmly. However, we believe forced integration violates your own legal precedents. She nodded to her team, who activated a holographic display. Earth was never properly registered in the Galactic Registry before the integration notice was issued. According to Statute 7329B of Hegemony Law, this renders the claim procedurally invalid. The Council Arbiter consulted its records. This appears correct. However, the registration can be completed retroactively. Catherine had anticipated this response. Before you make that decision, the people of Earth wish to present information relevant to your deliberations. At her signal, Lieutenant Mitchell activated another display. Images of Earth's military history began to play. Ancient battles, modern warfare, nuclear tests. Humanity has spent much of its history in conflict, Catherine explained. While we now strive for peace, our capacity for warfare is unmatched among Category 3 species. The display showed Earth's diverse environments and adaptations. Our people have survived in deserts, Arctic regions, mountains, and oceans. We thrive in environments that would kill many species represented here. Xerian Commander Grelvax, who had just arrived from Earth, interrupted. This primitive posturing changes nothing. Their weapons are toys compared to hegemony technology. Catherine maintained her composure. Commander, we are not threatening war. We are simply explaining why forcing our integration would be costly for all involved. She gestured to Lieutenant Mitchell, who stepped forward. We have brought one demonstration to illustrate our point. With the Council's permission, we would like to show rather than tell. The Council Arbiter hesitated, then nodded slowly. Proceed with your demonstration, humans. The Council will then deliberate on your petition. Lieutenant Mitchell transmitted coordinates to the Defiant's computer system. On the main display in the Council chamber, an image appeared of a small, uninhabited moon orbiting a gas giant in a nearby system. This moon contains no life forms, Catherine explained to the council. We selected it specifically to ensure no harm would come to any sentient beings. The Xarian representative, Commander Grelvax, made a dismissive gesture. What possible demonstration could impress the council? Your species barely understands interstellar travel. Catherine maintained her diplomatic composure. We wish to demonstrate not our current technology, but our capacity to adapt and utilize new information when motivated. She nodded to Mitchell, who pressed a sequence of commands on his control pad. Moments later, the view on the display showed a small probe leaving the Defiant, speeding toward the uninhabited moon. 20 days ago, Catherine continued, a Xarian scout craft crashed on our planet. Within that time, our scientists not only reverse-engineered its propulsion system, as evidenced by our presence here today, but also understood the principles behind its weapons technology. The probe reached the moon's surface and deployed a device roughly the size of a small car. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a blinding flash of light engulfed the screen. When the image cleared, a perfect hemispherical crater had replaced a mountain range on the moon's surface. Silence fell over the council chamber. What you just witnessed, Catherine said into the quiet, was our adaptation of Xarian energy conversion technology, scaled down and rebuilt with materials available on Earth. Commander Grelvax stood abruptly. This is impossible. Your species couldn't possibly understand the principles involved, let alone replicate them in such a short time. And yet, the evidence is before you, Catherine replied. Imagine what we might accomplish if threatened with extinction or subjugation. The Council Arbiter's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been concern. Ambassador Morris, is this a threat against the hegemony? Not at all. Arbiter, this is context for our petition. Catherine's voice remained level. Earth wishes to establish peaceful relations with the galactic hegemony and all its member worlds. We seek trade, cultural exchange, and mutual benefit. She paused, making eye contact with various council members. However, we also wish to make absolutely clear that forced integration will be met with resistance, unlike anything the hegemony has encountered from a Category 3 species. Dr. Benjamin Wright, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stepped forward. Our studies of hegemony history suggest that your empire has grown through relatively peaceful means for over a millennium. The last time you faced true warfare was 800 years ago. While we have mastered peace among our worlds, continued Dr. Wright, humans have been perfecting the art of war against ourselves for thousands of years. We would prefer not to apply that knowledge against others. The display changed to show Earth's rapid technological progression over the past century. From primitive flight to space travel in less than 70 years, Catherine noted. From discovering atomic energy to weapons that could destroy our civilization in less than a decade. Lieutenant Mitchell added, the device we demonstrated was constructed by a small team working in secret for less than 3 weeks. Imagine what our entire planet could develop given real motivation. Catherine addressed the council directly. Earth has one simple request. Leave us be. Grant us non-interference status and recognition of our sovereignty. In return, we offer this single warning instead of conflict. Commander Grelvax's scales had darkened to a deep blue, a sign of concern in Xarian body language. He conferred briefly with other hegemony representatives. The Xarian delegation requests time to consult with our leadership, he finally announced. The Council Arbiter's voice resonated through the chamber. This council will recess to consider Earth's petition. Ambassador Morris, your delegation will remain as our guests until a decision is reached. As the council members filed out, Catherine caught the eye of Commander Grelvax. For the first time, she saw something new in the alien's expression. Respect. The Galactic Council chambers reopened after 3 tense days of deliberation. Ambassador Catherine Morris and her team were escorted back inside, where representatives from hundreds of worlds waited in tiered seating that rose high above the central floor. The atmosphere was thick with tension. The Council Arbiter's crystalline form glimmered under the chamber lights as it addressed the assembly. After careful consideration of Earth's petition and demonstration. This council has reached a decision." Catherine stood with perfect posture, her expression revealing nothing of her inner anxiety. Lieutenant Mitchell and the rest of the Earth delegation flanked her, equally composed. "The petition for non-interference status has been approved," announced the Arbiter. "Earth will be granted provisional autonomy with observer status in the galactic hegemony." A mixture of sounds, some clearly protests, others supportive, erupted from the gathered representatives. The Arbiter raised a crystalline appendage for silence. "However, conditions apply," it continued. "Earth must establish a proper diplomatic presence within the hegemony. Your system will remain under observation to ensure compliance with basic interstellar laws." Commander Grelvac stepped forward. His scales had returned to their normal coloration, but his posture remained stiff. "The Xarian fleet will withdraw to the edge of your solar system. We will maintain a monitoring station at that distance, but will not interfere with Earth's internal affairs." Catherine nodded respectfully. Earth accepts these terms and thanks the Council for its wisdom. As the Earth delegation prepared to depart, they were approached by representatives from several independent systems, worlds that had managed to maintain their sovereignty within the hegemony sphere of influence. "Your species has accomplished something remarkable," said a tall, avian being. "Few have ever challenged the hegemony so directly and succeeded." "We didn't seek confrontation," Catherine replied. "Only recognition of our right to determine our own future." Nevertheless, the alien continued, "Your demonstration has shifted certain perspectives within the Council. Several of us would be interested in establishing more direct relations with Earth." 6 months later, Captain Frank Harris stood on the bridge of the ESS Horizon, Earth's first true interstellar diplomatic vessel. Built using a combination of human innovation and adapted alien technology, the ship represented humanity's rapid advancement since first contact. "Final checks complete," Captain reported his executive officer. "We're ready for departure to the Galactic Council Station." Frank nodded, looking at the diverse crew around him. Scientists, diplomats, and military personnel from nations that had once been bitter enemies, now united in Earth's first official delegation to the wider galaxy. "Signal Earth Command that we're underway," he ordered, "and activate the jump drive." On Earth, changes had come rapidly. The reverse-engineered Xarian technology had revolutionized energy production, medicine, and communications. Nations still maintained their sovereignty, but a new global council coordinated humanity's approach to interstellar relations. The Xarian monitoring station had kept its distance as promised. Occasional communication revealed that the hegemony was still processing the implications of Earth's resistance and rapid technological adaptation. In the Galactic Council, Earth's observer status had granted humans access to information about the wider galaxy. They learned of trade routes, political alliances, and most importantly, other independent systems that had maintained their freedom from hegemony control. Within a year, Earth had established a defense pact with these independent systems, a mutual protection agreement that strengthened their collective position against potential hegemony expansion. In the Council archives, a new designation was added to Earth's entry, the species that warns only once. The phrase spread through diplomatic channels, becoming something between a title of respect and a cautionary tale. As the ESS Horizon prepared for its first diplomatic mission, Ambassador Morris stood at a viewport, watching Earth recede behind them. Lieutenant Mitchell, now Captain Mitchell of Earth's growing defense fleet, joined her. "Do you think they'll try again?" he asked quietly. Catherine considered the question before answering. "Perhaps. Empires rarely abandon their ambitions entirely, but they'll think carefully before moving against us again. And if they do..." Catherine's expression hardened slightly. "Then they'll discover that our first demonstration was remarkably restrained."